Okay, good afternoon, and welcome to our sixth annual summit. As some of you may know, last year we did a virtual summit, and because we continue to deal with this whole thing called the pandemic, aka COVID-19, I think we've become a little bit more accustomed to this environment, and we certainly respect everyone's time in terms of coming to meet with us today because we know what your life looks like during the week. You know, everyone is basically remote. So this has to be very challenging. It has to be tiresome. But I think that you'll get a lot out of this year's summit because we've shortened it a little bit just because we want to stick with our protocols and make sure that we continue to do exactly what we do. So without further ado, first of all, I thank everyone for showing up on time. And we're going to start with our very first speaker. One of the things we will not do is read everyone's bio because you have access to that and you can read it for yourself. And feel free to ask any questions of whoever the presenter is. So without further ado, it gives me a lot of pleasure to welcome Stanley H Green, who's going to talk about the power of thinking.
Well, thank you, Ruth. Thank you, Jazz, and I really appreciate all of you being here this morning. I'm really honored to be presenting to you today. I'm living in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, but most of my life has been in the Philadelphia area. Growing up in Philadelphia, from I guess going back to Mantua, about 32nd and Haverford in West Philadelphia, to North Philadelphia, 30th and Diamond. And then West Oak Lane, where I graduated from Germantown High, and then went on to Penn. And fortunately, I had an opportunity to play basketball at Penn for a guy named Chuck Daly, who went on to great things in the pros, and then a career in, you'll see it on LinkedIn, in telecom with Verizon, to cable TV, working for philanthropists, giving your nonprofit. You may have heard of philanthropist Jerry Lenfest. And you know, I was a 33-year-old general manager in one of his cable systems, one of his worst cable systems. And you talk about the power of thinking, this is where it applies, as well as through all of the other experiences growing up. But it was near the bottom of his 13 cable systems in suburban PA, and we turned it around to make it number 2 in a year and a half. And it was not by replacing people, moving people out, bringing my own people in. It was by changing the mindset of the people who were already there, moving them from a defeatist attitude to being an attitude around accomplishment, believing in themselves, working together, and getting it all done. So fast forward into the internet, and I ran internet businesses, a synthetic turf company, but many different industries. And it was always a common thread. And by the way, my last kind of job before, you know, focusing on my company, Power Thinking, was as a deputy treasurer. I ran the Bureau of Unclaimed Property. You may have heard of unclaimed property, where you have missing money. So I was the director of that organization, and then I became a deputy treasurer, focused on financial literacy. There were a couple of legislators out of Philadelphia who were really pushing and drafting legislation around mandating financial literacy education in the schools. And of course, we all know through our lives the importance of financial literacy, and yet, you know, the bill hasn't been passed because, you know, it's not a priority and hasn't been funded. So now I focus on what I'm super passionate about, and that's helping people to bounce back from life's adversities faster. You know, we all know we have setbacks. Was just mentioned, I think Ruth just talked about, Jazz, the global pandemic that we're still wrestling with and you know, working to survive. And you know, I lost a few people that I know. Chief among them was, as you all know, most likely Cody Anderson, who was a general manager and president of WDAS back when I met him. And he gave me my first opportunity to get on the radio, and I had a financial success radio show. I had these financial tips. I wrote a column in the Tribune, but Cody really gave me my start and did some work with WURD as well. But Cody surprisingly passed away, earlier this year through COVID. So, many of us have had people that we know, folks who are close to us, who have passed from this. And then there's been all of the residual negatives that have occurred. I have a grandson who, in going back from virtual school to regular face-to-face, all of a sudden, had this tremendous amount of anxiety and other issues and things that I would have never thought would have come up, and it's been a real challenge. And so, these are the things that, as well as things like our everyday relationships with significant others, things that may be said that could trigger other things, and it escalates. Things that are going on in the neighborhoods. When I was in junior high school at Wagner Junior High, there was a student at Leeds who was kicked out of Wagner in 1971, kicked out of Wagner Junior High, went to Leeds, was suspended because he was cursing in the hallways, and actually killed a teacher. You've probably heard of Sanford Friedman, and I think there's a school named after him in Philadelphia. But it was all around, the things that I'll be sharing with you, what we do with our emotions, what we do with our thoughts. And I'm honored to say that I was able to acquire a company called Reflective Learning, which was based out of Philadelphia. And it actually possessed the intellectual property rights to material that came out of the University of Pennsylvania's Positive Psychology Center. And this material is all around resilience, evidence-based strengths, inner strengths that have been identified. There are 7 of them. And then evidence-based skills that have been identified that can help people as they build these skills to be able to manage their emotions and to bounce back from any adversity faster. And I'd like to share those to you quickly this morning or this afternoon. Do I have the ability to share a screen? No, I'm seeing here that I don't. So if I could have that, if I could be granted that, I guess it's co-hosting or the ability to share, I'd like to do that. And that will come up in a second, I'm sure.
You should have it now, Stan.
Should have it now. Yeah, I'm hitting, says host disabled participants screen sharing. Maybe whatever you did, maybe if you do it again, it'll toggle it back. Let's see. If not, folks, no worries. I'm resilient. We'll just kind of work through it, and we'll just talk it through. So it's no big deals. Let's see if that can happen.
Try it again. I reset again.
Okay.
Maybe I need to stop sharing. Just a moment.
Yeah. Yep. That'll do it.
All right.
Okay, let's try it again. Is there I tried it again, it didn't work. Do you have the ability to just do a co-host?
I've got it set that everyone can share, including you.
He should have moderator rights.
He does, actually. I'm not sure why it's not allowing him to share. Try it again.
Okay, let me try it one more time. Host disabled participant screen sharing. So I don't know if that's it in the general toggle, but it's no big deal. Like I said, I got to practice what I preach, right?
And if you send me what you're trying to share, I will share it real quickly because you should be able to share. And we have other speakers that are also sharing their slides as well. So for the sake of time, email, is it a PowerPoint?
It's a PowerPoint, and it's probably best because of where the PowerPoint is and so forth, and how I would get it over. It would take up too much time, but I could actually just go through because we only have about 13 minutes. I don't want to take up too much more of your time and stay on time. So I think we could do it effectively without the without the PowerPoint. So no big deal. So let's jump right into it. So what I mentioned to you is that, number one, I've had this company for a few years now, and we are now, I've done work in Japan and Tokyo and in China, in Chongqing and Beijing, and in Philly, well, not in Philly, but in the United States, where we do some work with AFLAC, you know, with their commission salespeople. And we've done some things with Comcast, with their training organization. And now we're working with Merck. But here's what I want to share. And this is what's cool about all of this, that many of you may have some really advanced skills and credentials and certifications in psychology and social work. And you may have heard of this, and we'll go through it. But you have been exposed to many, you know, very, you know, industry related terms as associated as it relates to the assessing of challenges that people may have and how to solve them. But these are all common sense. And I'll take you through, number one, the 7 inner strengths of resilience and I'll tell you how we actually help people to transform themselves and build these strengths through our weekly calls, and I'll give you information about. The first inner strength is emotion regulation, and that is the ability to stay calm under pressure. Now think about it. You know, how many shootings and violent acts could be avoided if folks were stronger in this area of controlling their emotions? And as you know, there are 5 big negative emotions that folks experience. And these emotions can be reduced significantly. Some of them, you know, eliminated altogether. Their anger, and that's when someone has this belief that someone violated their rights. And I can remember going to Wagner, before going to Wagner, summer before going to Wagner Junior High, where we had a number of gangs. Some of you are from Philadelphia, you may remember the Clang and Somerville and the Haines Street gang. I mean, Germantown High had about 7 of them. So at Wagner, I was told, you know, when you have, because I had an afro at the time, believe it or not, back in the 70s, and we'd have these picks, and they would say, well, if you put the pick in your back pocket, if it's on the left, that means you're from the Clang. If it's in the right back pocket, you're from the Somerville. So I wouldn't carry my pick. They say, don't look someone in the eye, because if you look someone in the eye, here was the term, they would say, yo, who you gritting on? And all of a sudden the fight's going to escalate. Like, I was just looking. And so these are the things that happen. It's all about emotion. Someone felt angry because they felt that their rights were being violated when you really weren't doing anything but looking. But that was just their own thinking. So emotion regulation is absolutely key. Next, related to emotion regulation is impulse control. That is the ability not to say or do the first thing that comes to mind. Think about the combination of emotion regulation and impulse control when it relates to the violence, you know, with young people that we had back in the early 70s. They were keeping track in the newspaper, but thanks to people like yourself back in those days, in the Sunny Hills and the Reverend Floyds and so forth, you know, who were out there and being proactive in helping us young people to understand, you know, the consequences of some of those actions. Didn't totally eliminate them, but we reduced them. They helped us to reduce those significantly. The third is empathy, the ability to understand another person's experiences and emotions. Certainly, we need more empathy. Self-efficacy is a huge, and you're dealing with that, with what you're helping young people to do. And that is to have that belief that you have control over your ability to succeed in the world. Related to self-efficacy is number 5, optimism. That's the view that all things will ultimately have a successful outcome. And some of these, they sound pretty straightforward and sound easy, but when we really delve into it, there are many people that are lacking these strengths significantly. And certainly if we could, you know, work with young people in the schools while they're in the school, while they're experiencing all of these, you know, we can see some significant successes. Next is causal analysis, and that's a systematic way of finding the root cause of a situation or problem. Apologize, I heard something vibrating. That was my Bluetooth. Someone was trying to call me. And so the key there is the 5 whys, asking the question why. When we're trying to drill down to the root cause of a situation or problem, folks are talking about violence and they're dealing with guns and so forth. And as we drill down, we all know that there's roots that go all the way back to what we have experienced, as an enslaved people, and then subsequently all of the other things that were laws that hurt us financially, and caused some of the issues that we're dealing with today. And then finally, reaching out. Reaching out is actually a strength. Unfortunately, in our society, reaching out is viewed as a weakness. If you have to go get help, then something must be wrong with you. And the reality is that many problems can be quickly solved. We can bounce back from many adversities much faster if we make that phone call, send that text message to someone, accept someone's phone calls who's trying to reach out to us for help because they haven't seen us, they haven't heard from us, they sense that something's wrong, and we just go, well, look, let me get through this by myself and then I'll connect with you folks. No, this is the time to connect and then take action when faced with setbacks and challenges. So what are the skills that help people build those strengths? And even with a presentation like this and exposure to this, it's not going to transform people. There has to be repeated exposure because we're talking about deep-rooted beliefs and mental issues that we have to get ourselves through. And so we really need to have this reinforced on an ongoing basis. And I'll tell you how I do that, with what we do on Wednesdays. And before I get into the skills, I mentioned 5 big negative emotions that I started with anger. There's also guilt, where we feel that we're violating somebody else's rights. There's sadness, when that's just a pure loss, a loss of a loved one, loss of a job. That's loss of actually, that's just pure loss. There's embarrassment. Let's say you were, at a high position at a company, you were vice president, you were there for 10 years, and all of a sudden they tap you on the shoulder and said, hey, sorry, we're closing this department down. There's some embarrassment along with anger and sadness. This loss of standing in a group because you tied your very existence to that position. How many people have done that? And then once the position's lost, they feel lost. And then finally, there's anxiety. That's huge. And that is a situation where there's this fear of a future threat. We don't know exactly what that threat is, but we fear something's going to happen. And, it's keeping us anxious. So what are the skills that can help us build those inner strengths? One is the skill of ABC. And for those of you that have been in the field, I'm not like you, professional in social work and, and in psychology. However, I am skilled in life and I've run businesses. I've dealt with people all the time. But this one skill, the first of the 7 skills of resilience that helps us build these inner strengths, was discovered by a prominent psychologist from back in the 50s and 60s named Dr. Albert Ellis. You may have heard of him, one of the fathers of cognitive behavioral therapy. And he came up with this skill, which is tremendous. And it's the skill of ABC. And that's understanding the relationship between A, the adversity, the thing that happened to us, that B, the belief about what happened to us, which drives the C, the consequence. And that consequence are essentially those 5 big negative emotions. And I'll give you a quick example of that I'm sure you all can relate to. Think about, I remember, of course, living in Philadelphia, you're getting around, on your own with your own vehicle. You can't avoid the Schuylkill Expressway. You can, try to do your best, but eventually you're going to be ended up on the expressway. And eventually somebody's going to cut you off as you're driving. You're driving along, you're like, I'm going into work, I'm going to have a fantastic day. And pow, somebody cuts you off. You're like, this stupid person, how dare they do that? And in fact, you may drive up along them and, give them some choice words or the fist or the finger, or some people, because of their poor emotion regulation and impulse control, even worse. So that's the adversity was getting cut off, we typically go from A to C, right? From the adversity to the consequence to I'm angry. They did this, I'm angry. But what we lose and what we may not realize, it was the belief about the adversity that drove that C. And if we can change the belief about what happened, then we can eliminate or significantly reduce the negative emotion. Very, very powerful. So instead of being angry, let's say if somebody cuts us off, we got the A, instead of the belief being, which drove the anger, that person violated me, they violated my rights. Instead, you may be thinking, well, they were maybe in a rush to get to an appointment, or maybe there's a loved one in the hospital that's suffering from COVID and they may not have long to live. So if you believe that, if that's your B in that ABC, you're not going to be angry. So this is where we talk about, and we get to that saying, it's not what happens to you, the A, it's how you respond to what happens. And it's the B, your belief about that, what happens, that can change and they reduce and eliminate those negative emotions. The next skill, as we move to them, is the avoiding thinking traps. As many of you know, we have about 50,000 thoughts a day that our brains are processing, 50,000 or more. Unfortunately, 70 to 80% of those thoughts are typically repetitive or negative. During the pandemic, think about how it was every day, when we're getting out of this, you know, this is really bad. And there are many other thoughts that come to mind. Every second and a half or so, there's a different thought. As I'm talking, there are different thoughts flowing through your head about what I'm talking about or about other things. When we get into the rest of the agenda, what's for dinner tonight, and many times our thoughts will fall into these negative traps. And it was Dr. Aaron Beck of University of Pennsylvania, retired, now just turned 100 years old, one of the fathers of cognitive behavioral therapy, that came up with these thinking traps. And they are common sense as well. And what are they? First, jumping to conclusions. How many times have we jumped to conclusions about something having no evidence, right? That may have happened with us just within the past 24 hours. Next is personalizing, when we beat ourselves up too much about something. Another is externalizing, we're blaming others. Another one is minimizing and magnifying. How many times have we magnified, make the mountain out of the molehill around situations that may have occurred, but then we minimize the good things? Then there's mind reading, and we think we know what the other person's thinking. How many times in our personal relationships and our significant others talking, and we cut them off, say, oh, I know where you're going with this. And they say, you don't know where I'm going. Let me finish. You let them finish and you go, oh, that wasn't what I thought, right? Because we mind read. We have to avoid that. Overgeneralizing is another, we have a group of people and ethnic groups that are painted with a broad brush where folks overgeneralize about them. Regardless of all the things I've accomplished, I can walk in the store with a t-shirt and someone will say, or make assumptions. Or I remember going into a Home Depot and the person saying to a spouse whose purse was at a distance, oh, hon, get your purse. And I'm going, huh? Was that because I walked in? There's tunnel vision, and then there's emotional reasoning. The next skill is detecting icebergs. Helping people to drill down to those deep-rooted, below the surface, like the iceberg, below the surface beliefs that are actually holding them back. The next skill, number 4, is actually challenging those beliefs. How can we push back on those beliefs that are not serving us well? Many are rooted in the first 8 years and have been developed in the first 8 years of our lives. And we move throughout our lives saying, this is the way it is, this is the way I react. It's not going to change, when in fact it can change. There's putting things in their proper perspective. The next is calming and focusing. Many of you know about mindfulness and taking those deep breaths. And then finally, real-time resilience. How can we leverage all of these skills so that we don't have quite the wear and tear on our bodies and on our minds and the stresses as we bounce back from life's adversities? We're not going to eliminate the adversities, but we can manage the response. And so what we do, I usually end with a slide of Serena Williams. And they say, our expectation is not that you're just exposed to these skills. Like when Serena Williams was coming up and her dad said, okay, this is how you do this is how you do that. This is a backhand, serve, so forth and so on. And she said, okay, I got it. And then expect her to go out and be a champion. Is practice. And to this day, she's been in that for how many decades, still practicing the same things every day. And we give an opportunity for people to do this on our Wednesday calls. Every Wednesday, just 30 minutes, 7:30 to 8 a.m. And then again, 9:30 to 10 p.m. We focus on a skill or inner strength. We send out a video, 2 to 5 minutes the night before, and then we talk about it every Wednesday. That's our Power Thinking Wednesdays. And folks have sent me all kinds of testimonials that they have noticed the difference in how they respond to those everyday adversities if they've been on, when they've been on these calls consistently. Remember, because we're talking about, retraining our brain. When they've been on these calls consistently over a 4 to 6 month period. So as I conclude, I want to throw in the chat box a link that you can actually use to click. And if you'd like to be on those calls, you can just click that and put your information in, or you can text your first and last name to me at 215-219-8409. That's my cell number. And we'll make sure you get on that database to receive those automatic texts. Okay, so I really appreciate this opportunity. It was my honor to be here with you, and I wish you well for the remainder of the meeting and the remainder of the year.
Okay.
Well, thank you so very much. I was sitting back here and I'm saying to myself, what do you mean you're not an expert in talking all of this stuff? Look, I teach this. You did wonderful. I'm like, I so appreciate everything you said, and I'm sure everyone else that was listening, you were excellent. Thank you so much. And I'm looking in the chat, but I didn't see the information come up. Jazz, do you see it?
Yes, he sent it only to me.
He didn't do it to everyone.
Drop down, so everyone can see that. So I'll redirect that information. Thank you.
Thank
Stanley.
you so much. Thank you so
now.
much. I'm going to definitely try to make one of those Wednesday evening things. That's great. Thank you so much.
Okay, have a good meeting, everyone. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much, Stan.
Okay, is our next speaker here?
That would be me. I'm here.
Oh, that's you. Yeah, you here. Okay.
I am here. Thank you, everyone, for being here. We have additional people that will be joining a little late. They've also been asked to immediately mute their devices as they come into this space. I thought it was very, very important to start this year's session off with Stan. I've been actually involved in the Wednesday Power Thinking sessions for the past 6 months, and it really has taken me to another level, not just in my professional life, but in my personal life as well. We're always feeding our bodies with so much in our minds, with so much information that could get muddled and really affect our judgment. And so I find that when I tune into the Power Thinking sessions, and there are people from all over the globe that are involved, hearing their questions and their thoughts, their concerns and their affirmations is really empowering for me. So I invite you all to do that. In fact, FSP Against Bullying has invested in the sessions. And so every member of our organization has access to Power Thinking at no personal cost to you. The organization is picking up the tab for that. So without further ado, I'm going to move on to my part, which is kind of giving you an overview of our annual report. And if you've had any kind of conversation with me about anything, I'm kind of a visual person. And I always say I can show you better than I can tell you. So I'm going to get something going just a moment so you can see exactly what I'm talking about when I say I could actually show you better than I can tell you as it relates to our annual report and how we've done and what we've done, and the individuals we need to hold in high esteem and gratitude to for helping this organization get where they are. And then following a short video, less than 10 minutes, and I'd like your undivided attention with this because we're going to talk further about all the many hands and the energy that goes into making this organization what it is today.
All right now, you know you're doing it well when you got.
Can everyone see that?
Money sign in the anti-bullying.
Thumbs up if you can see it.
Dr. Roster, and congratulations. Shout.
Hold on, Hudge. Try to stop bullying.
All right, yay!
Okay, yes, ma'am. That eliminates my thing.
Awesome, awesome. That stands up against bullying. Thank you.
Can I get these guys face covers? She's so cute. Purple works really well.
Hi everybody, Michelle Tomko, comedian from Atlantic City, New Jersey, reminding you it's only okay to talk mean to someone if you're on stage, they're paying you, and they said, hey, it's okay to roast me. If not, kindness always counts. Be nice.
Hi, this is Jazz, the founder of FSP Against Bullying, and we want to invite you to our Fab Reading Series. And the reason it's important, it's 30 minutes to learn something about your children that you just didn't know. Most parents would say that their children hasn't experienced, witnessed, or afraid of bullying behavior. However, in just 30 minutes in our reading space, which is virtual and safe, you'll learn just a little bit more about how your children feel about bullying.
Hi, okay, oh my goodness, I'm so happy to be here, and thank you, FSP, for having me. So I'm very excited to interact with all of you, share a little bit of my story, and to read. Before we get into some of the book, I'm just going to share my story a little bit with FSP and with bullying. So when I was about your age, maybe a little bit younger, I was bullied pretty bad and it was not fun. This went on for the entire school year, and most of it I didn't even tell anybody. And it was really hard for me, especially because I was just like really young. My mom would pick me up every day and ask how my day was, and I wouldn't even say anything. I would just say that it was fine and change the subject. But one day my mom picked me up, and the bullying that day had been especially bad. They threatened to fight me, and I was just really scared. I didn't know what to do. So my mom asked how my day was, and I just cried because I felt like I couldn't take it anymore. I was scared and tired of having to deal with the same thing every single time I went to school. So I told her everything that had been going on, and then she talked to my school staff about it. And then a few months later, Miss Jazz came to my school, and my school started an anti-bullying program. So bullying is not an easy thing to deal with at all. And a lot of the times we can question ourselves and question if something's wrong with us and why it's happening to us. But a lot of the time, all the time, it's not us. It's just the other person. And who knows what they have going on inside. So the best approach is just to treat people with kindness. So
hello, I'm Diana Montero, board member of FSP Against Bullying and co-chair of the Dr. Linda Spooner Resilience Scholarship Committee. Scholarship applications will be accepted from October 1st through November the 15th. If you're 10 years old and over, help us celebrate your resilience and apply, because everyone deserves to feel safe. Hola, soy Diana Montero, miembro de la Junta Directiva de FSP Against Bullying y copresidente del Comité de Becas de Resiliencia de la doctora Linda Spooner. Solicitudes de becas se aceptarán desde el 1 de octubre hasta el 15 de noviembre. Si tiene 10 años o más, por favor, ayúdenos a celebrar su resiliencia y aplique, porque todos merecemos sentirnos seguros. Muchas gracias.
All right. So, like I said, I can show you better than I can tell you. And if in less than 10 minutes, you didn't have the breadth and the spectrum of what your influence and your leadership is doing for literally thousands of lives that we touch in a short period of time. We're not even fully through 2021. And I can't be more proud than to work alongside the leadership in this organization. And oftentimes our board management doesn't come together to really see the impact. Some of the things that you witnessed in that video included our Back to School, Not Back to Cruel initiative, where we distributed close to 4,000 book bags. And thanks to Ruth Smith, we were able to distribute even more reusable face masks to youth, as well as our reading series hosted by our youth ambassador, Kaylin Brielle Bell, which is going on as we speak. It started in September, and it's a monthly reading series. The testimonials from the parents, from their children being involved in our reading series has been pretty extraordinary. Parents that didn't even think their children had bullying experiences are now having that conversation, an uncomfortable conversation as it is, but a very important conversation with their children. I say all of that to say is you're doing an extraordinary job, but I also want you to know who your boots on the ground is. And for that reason, I'm going to share another image with you so you can see who those boots on the ground are. These are the lives and the people who have dedicated themselves pretty much full time, even though they only signed up for part-time. And I'm not going to do this in any particular order. I'm just going to go from left to right. We have Tia Sadler, who is our community outreach coordinator. Tia works directly with a lot of the community organizers and helps to decide which events we'll attend. And we attend a number of events. We get a lot of invitations to attend events in a partnership with other community outreach organizations. And we just can't do it all. We're a small nonprofit organization. And so Tia helps us narrow down the organizations that we can partnership with in the events we can attend. Keep in mind, we're still in a pandemic, and even though municipalities have allowed large-scale events to happen, most recently we were invited to participate in the Woodbury Township Fall Festival, and that was fantastic. They actually issued a proclamation in honor of FSP Against Bullying for Bullying Prevention Month. So that was pretty extraordinary to receive that from the mayor of the township. Next, we have Desiree Peterkin Bell. She coordinates our youth ambassadors. And in fact, the youth ambassador that's responsible for reading our series on a monthly basis happens to be her daughter, Kaylin Brielle Bell. And so we're pretty excited about that program. It's going incredibly well. We also have another youth ambassador who actually comes out to our public speaking events. She's actually Miss Teen USA, I apologize, Miss Teen USA, Jamira Williams. And so she's done an extraordinary job at being a face and voice for our youth ambassadors. Next, we have Deek Say, who actually is our partnership development. So some would say, what is partnership development? Well, it's a fancy word for grant writer. So instead of just writing grants, we believe that partnerships get developed with, be it nonprofit organizations, be it corporate sponsors, be it governmental entities. So DEEP is largely responsible for partnership development. Next, we have Beatrice Smith, who is executive assistant, and a lot of the imagery, a lot of the things that you see that I've been able to produce has not been produced alone. Beatrice dots the I's and crosses the T's and makes sure that I'm able to flow appearingly seamlessly through a lot of the presentations you're going to see. I owe her everything. She keeps me on track. She also assists Ruth Smith with a lot of her initiatives under the Education and Awareness Committee. Next, there is Ruthie Smith. Obviously, she runs our education and awareness across the spectrum. So the programs that you see, such as the reading series from Back to School, that's coordinated through our education and awareness team, and Ruth leads that fabulously. Next, we got Stanley Duran. And let me tell you, Stanley jumped on board at the early part of the summer. We had long hoped for a database management system. We have a lot of points of contact in our database system, but more importantly, we needed to streamline how we're managing our volunteers. So in addition to our members, which exceed 2,000, we have a number of volunteers and interns we needed to track. Because this is the first year we actually had work study interns, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. Next, we have Joshua Nelson, who actually coordinates and manages operations and quality control, a lot behind the scenes in terms of keeping, again, our I's dotted and T's crossed with quality control. That's Nelson, Joshua Nelson. And then we've got Kayla Hammond, and not last and not least by any stretch of the imagination, because as you can see from this infographic, she has 4 interns in the work study program, and I want to stay with that just a moment. Our interns in the work study have to be tracked in terms of the work they're doing, the number of hours they work for us, and reporting to their universities or colleges. They are here on grant programs and they receive compensation. And so we have to manage them for the duration of the semesters that they're working for us. So that's a tall order. In addition to that, we have 72 active volunteers. So in the video, you saw a lot of moving parts and a lot of bodies that were wearing the FSP logo or t-shirts. Those individuals are drawn from those 72 volunteers that happen to be across the country, largely concentrated in the Northeast. So Kayla actually manages that. She needs to figure out who needs what assistance. For example, if Ruth needs support with education and awareness program or initiative, she would pull from that body of people. So that's a lot to ask of Kaylin, I know, and she's doing an extraordinary job. Okay. If you have any questions on that, please don't hesitate to indicate it in the chat and I'll respond accordingly. So I say all that to say, you guys rock. You're doing a phenomenal job, and you're doing it with really, really limited resources, and we couldn't do it without you. Ruth said something the other day, and it just stuck with me. She said, "This is us. This is us," 3 words. And she's absolutely right. This is us. Tiny but mighty, small but strong. And we should all be proud of the work that we're doing. Ruth, back to you.
Okay, I just unmuted myself, and I'm looking on our agenda. And next up, but I don't think that she's arrived yet, would be Dominique.
Hey Ruth, good afternoon. I'm here.
Good. How come I don't see you? You know what? Don't be doing that. Don't be doing that. Hey, Dominique. Okay, well, listen, I love it. She's here. I didn't see her, and I'm just going to be quiet. I'm muting myself. Go on.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. It is my pleasure. It is an honor to be with you all this afternoon. Working with the organization for what, Jazz, maybe 7 years now in one capacity or the other. So it feels like coming home again. So Jazz, I think that you have the slides. If you want to drive, that would be phenomenal. I see a lot of new faces, which is so fantastic. This is us. I love that. This is us. Strong but mighty, all in it together.
I'm talking and I have myself on mute. Which email address did you send the slides to? First, let's see if you can share your slide, and if not, I will share it, and just tell me which email address that you sent it to.
All right, I sent it to your Gmail, so I just replied to the email that you had sent me yesterday.
Okay, fantastic. See if you can share it, and if not, I will share.
I'm getting an error message on my side, host disabled participant screen sharing.
Okay, let me grab that then. Sorry for the technical challenges we're experiencing.
No worries. And while Jazz is pulling that up, so again, happy to be with you all. This afternoon, we're going to spend just a little bit of time talking about and really looking at strategies for building the capacity to have what I would call critical or crucial conversations, and yet uncomfortable conversations many times. As leaders, as organizers, as educators, we know that we play a critical role in helping our villages. So be it other parents, other students, other organizers, talk openly about the historical roots and the contemporary manifestations of social inequities and discrimination. So with this, it's all about learning how to communicate effectively, when to communicate, and also being able to push people really into the limelight, if you will, as far as advocacy is concerned, in sponsorship. So we're going to spend some time in that space this afternoon.
Can you see the slides?
I can. Did you want to make them in presentation mode?
I thought I had, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
This is when I need B.
That's right.
If you go up to file, click on file.
I got it.
No, go back up, go back, go. You need to be able to, nope, you don't, I don't think you want published. You want to be able to,
I actually do.
Slideshow. Go
No,
up.
that's the one I wanted. Can you see it? Dominique,
No,
that's
ma'am.
you can't see it?
No, I mean, I see something happening, but I don't see it in presentation mode just yet.
Okay.
So can I help you go to the file? The one from the left-hand side is the slideshow. So keep going down the line.
Okay.
On the menu at the top, you'll see a slideshow right there. Yep.
Keep going.
There.
Keep up.
Yep.
To the right.
There you
Bam.
go.
There we go. Is
From
that
the
Priya?
beginning.
Is that Priya?
Yes.
Thank you, Priya.
You're welcome.
Okay.
You see why I need you now.
No, I love it. Everybody's standing in the gap. I love this. All right. So really, again, learning how to communicate about the topics around white privilege, police brutality, again, discrimination, and everything in between is what we're going to be just thinking of, looking at some different strategies in order to do that this afternoon. Next slide, please. All right, so a little bit about me. Like I said, I have been involved with FSP for approximately 7 years, if not longer, in one capacity or the other. I've worked closely with Ruthie in the educational committee, as well as Jazz on some outside initiatives, and she certainly supported me as I've shifted and changed careers several times in this space. I am also the founding principal consultant of Remedy. Remedy is a small boutique organization, HR organization, and we specialize in JEDI, justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. In addition to that, I'm the founder and executive director of Hurricane Hoops, which is a grassroots AAU basketball organization. We focus on fundamentals in fitness for young girls anywhere from 12 years old to 19 years old. I am currently serving as the Director of Student Life at Our Lady of Mercy Academy, a predominantly white institution here in South Jersey, where I've come in and revamped their DE&I initiatives as well as the student experience. Prior to the last 2 years, I was a human resources partner executive in the biopharma space in Philadelphia with over 16 years of experience there. I am, again, wildly passionate about people, making sure that we are always improving processes, putting people in positions to be successful, but most importantly, providing pragmatic solutions, tangible solutions that we can now go out into the world and do our best work. I'm a sports enthusiast, a mother, daughter, sister, and friend, and I am so, again, grateful, honored to be with you all this afternoon. As far as the agenda is concerned, so it's really about setting the stage. How do we start the conversation? How do we know that a conversation even needs to happen, right? And then really preparing ourselves, preparing our audience. And again, when I say our audience, it could go from a myriad of different audience members, right? Our students, our employees, people that are just alongside us for the journey, so different peers. And then lastly, the piece that I know that all of us have really kind of leaned into over the last year, what do we do to now take care of ourselves, right? Now that we've expended all of that energy, we've taken care of everybody else's issues, what are we doing to make sure that we're pouring back into ourselves? All right, next slide. So this is important, right? Human conversation is the most ancient and easiest way to cultivate the conditions for change. When we sit together and talk about what's important, we begin to come alive. We each share what we see, what we feel, our experiences, and progress moves us forward together, right? And I think that that's extremely important, especially when we talk about this is us. Right? This is us. This is where we are. We are all kind of in our bubbles, right? In our little corner of the world. But how do we come together in times of stress and strife and uncertainty and uncomfortability to make certain that we are having these conversations and it's really propelling our organizations, ourselves, our networks forward in a meaningful way? So I want everybody to do me a favor. Close your eyes. Think about a time, maybe not in the near or the distant future, rather, that you had a conversation with someone and you walked away saying, man, I wish I would have said this. Is it me? Is it them? Am I overthinking things? Maybe I'm not hearing them correctly. And I want you to think about what were the feelings, right? How did you walk away feeling from that conversation? Was it anxious, right? Now I've got this anxiety. Now am I going crazy? I've got to tell my friend this. Oh my goodness, am I angry? Am I resentful? Open your eyes. For many of us, this happens almost daily, right? For many of us, we walk into rooms and sometimes people have to take a second look. Oh my gosh, I didn't expect you to look like that. When I talk to you on the phone, I don't know that that's what I expected, right? And we sometimes just brush that under the carpet and say, hey, you know what? I think that they were mistaken. I'm gonna let this one slide. If it happens again, I'll address it. What I want to make certain that we're all on the same page about is those are crucial conversations, right? Those are critical conversations that need to happen in real time. And when we're looking at just kind of the definition and from an alignment perspective, what are those crucial conversations? It's when the stakes are high. And it doesn't mean that money's on the line. It could mean that our reputation is on the line, our relationship is on the line. And if we continue to be in a relationship this way, if you continue to approach me in this way, then I am not going to be kind, be nice, or continue to do business with you in one respect or another. Crucial conversations are when opinions may differ. Our experiences differ. So again, sometimes we're coming to the table, again, with these preconceived notions. It's already, again, emotionally charged conversations, but we want to make certain that we're coming with an open heart and open mind, and we're able to extend empathy and grace in that space. And then lastly, it's when the outcome is going to significantly change someone's life, or there could be negative consequences. So when we're talking about risk, and especially when we're talking about bullying, if I don't have that conversation with that parent, with that person in the workplace, what's going to happen to that individual from a mental perspective, from an emotional perspective? What's going to happen? What are they going to leave this workplace and do when they go home? Next slide. Also, how do we need to recognize, or how do we recognize that a conversation needs to happen? And again, this is why I wanted you to close your eyes and kind of think about that time when, right? That time when you walked away from that conversation and you had sweaty palms and had to go outside for a cigarette, right? Or I have to get a fresh cup of coffee or a glass of water, or I need to call mom and dad and just blow off some steam. Right? What does that look like, and how it manifests in everyone is going to be a little bit different. But knowing that there's this either physical sign or emotional sign, or there's a behavior that comes on the heels of not having that conversation, that's how we know that we need to have it. And we need to have it in real time, right? And what we're going to talk about today is really equipping ourselves, but then also being able to advocate for other people who are not in the stages of life, or don't necessarily have the tools in their toolkit, the strength, maybe the courage to even have some of those conversations. Next slide. So why does the communication fail, right? Why does it not happen to begin with? Be it, again, working in groups, be it working in my organization, fear, right? Fear is a driver to close lips. When we talk about those uncomfortable conversations, uncomfortable topics, right? Fear is the one thing that bubbles up for a lot of us. And as we feel that fear and anxiety, a lot of times it causes us to certainly shut down. The lack of preparation, or just not knowing the words to say, right? Not having the capacity to have that conversation in a meaningful way. Lack of alignment. Are we on the same page? Are we even talking about the same thing? How many times have you walked into a room, into a conversation, and you may not be settled on a topic and you want to address it, and that other person says, oh, I thought we were talking about something completely different. Lack of empathy or tolerance. And that's really the educational piece, right? Making certain that we're coming from a place of education and knowing that we're all going to fail in this space. When we're looking at having these uncomfortable yet critical and crucial conversations, know that we are going to fail more times than we get it right. And it's about being able to be humble and have a heart of humility, and being able to grow back to the drawing board over and over and over again until we get it right. And then lastly, the reason why it fails is because of ego, right? Everybody thinks that they're right. If you ask me, I have the best ideas every single time, every single day. And it's about being able to take a back seat and really listen more times than we speak. Questions. So I'm going to pause right there. Questions, thoughts in the space, experience with having crucial or critical conversations, uncomfortable conversations, be it in your workplace, at school, heck, a board that you sit on.
Well, one of the things I can respond to that, because working, dealing with a lot of anxiety, within my work, I agree with everything you said, that fear is what stops the conversation. And I think that what helps is just take a deep breath and come out and say it. And once it's out there, it's like you can't take it back. For example, how many times have we watched on TV, the movies or whatever, and people in the court of law, and someone says, I object. And the judge will say, the jury will disregard that statement. Isn't that what everybody focuses on? I don't care
Sure.
what else. Soon as he tells you the jury will disregard that, everybody like, oh yeah, okay. And that will allow certain things to continue. So I think that I get what you're saying. You get over that fear by just getting certain things out and seeing what's going to come next.
Sure.
So thank you for that.
Yeah. Yeah. And the one thing that I like to advise people to do, again, when I was working in the HR space and now working in an academic setting, is write it down, right? Before you walk into that conversation, write it down and ask for the complete attention in the room, right? Because again, as leaders, we have an opportunity and we have the responsibility to set our employees, to set our students up for success. But as that person that's going into that space, we understand that there's some anxiety behind that. So what can we do? Making certain that we are free from distractions. Are we turning off, the television? Are we turning off the computer? Are we putting down the cell phone? That's definitely going to help to have a more engaging conversation. But writing it down is, I would say, number one key for preparing for the conversation. This gives whomever is that person that's going to speak an opportunity to make sure that they're hitting all of the high points.
Right.
Right. I don't forget anything. I'm hitting all of the high points. Everything is going to be put out on the table. And to your point, right, I can't take anything back. Now I give that other individual an opportunity to process what's being said, process how they're experiencing you, but then also what is the experience in the past, right? And I think that goes to this first point about deciding exactly what you're dealing with, right? Is this a one-time single isolated issue, or is this something that is continuous, right? When we talk about it from an HR perspective, it's generally around, has it created this hostile work environment? Has it been this continuous, pervasive act of bullying or making someone uncomfortable, making someone feel ostracized in that way? So first off, deciding on what it is that you're actually dealing with. And also when you're thinking about that, what's the remedy, right? What's the solution? I'm all about having solution-based conversations, right? Don't come to me with just all your problems, but also let's talk about some solutions. Let's kind of brainstorm what feels comfortable and what feels like progress in the space. Then once you've kind of thought about that and really outlined what you're actually dealing with, the other thing is understand why you're having the conversation, right? Do you need an apology? Are you looking for a way to move forward? Do you again have you brainstormed some solutions on what that looks like as we move forward in an amicable way?
Dominique, we've got some raised hands.
I'm sorry.
I don't know if you want to take the questions at the end or along the way.
Let's take them along the way. I mean, I want this to be as interactive as possible. Please.
I believe Frankie needs to unmute.
Yes, hello. This is my very first board meeting, and I really enjoy meeting all of you, and I love the way that you communicate. Dominique, I hope you can hear me okay.
I can, thank you.
I just wanted to express that there's a terminology that I brought into work worlds. It's called collective consciousness communication, because I love the way you have this set up, and everything you say is 100% spot on. But, in my experience, especially in the contractor world, where you see things and what you don't see and what is not said is really bringing the intentionality into things. Is what is your intention? What is your intention is such a, clarifying level to bring that forward in any type of conflict or any type of bullying or any type of attitude to undermine somebody. Is your intention to elevate yourself through undermining another? And so I believe, what you're doing is so, relevant. I've been blessed to be with a team of people. At one time, we did workplace wellness events, and then it went into collective consciousness, because so many people are not aware their behaviors. Although they're intelligent, although they're brilliant, their subconscious behaviors might be rooted long before they were in their career. And so I believe strongly in the collective consciousness level of bringing awareness and sometimes even humor. Sometimes people have to write a song together, no matter their titles, or something that's playful enough that they can let go of, I don't like you, I don't like that one, you seem to be competition towards what I'm looking for. And so I like the aspect of being able to clear consciousness. Obviously in meditation, we do that, but everybody meditates. So, I love the way you're expressing yourself. And I just wanted to share that I love, the simplicity and yet the strength of how you're presenting.
Thank you. Thank you. No, I appreciate that. And I love this idea of I love this idea of gamification too, right? Like when you talk about like intentionality, we know that as humans, it's 70% of the things that we don't say, right, is the thing that sends the message. So it's, again, the tone, it's somebody rolling their eyes, it's somebody on their phone, right? Like those are the messages that they're sending. But I love this idea of writing a song together, playing a game, putting a puzzle together so that we're meeting people where they are, right? And now we can really start off fresh, if you will, hopefully, right? Or at least we can find some commonality and some common ground to move forward. I absolutely love that. Thank you for that. Were there any other hands, Shaz? I didn't know if.
I believe that was the only hand I've seen. And then also, please feel free to put questions in the chat as well.
Yeah, and like I said, jump in, right? Like I think that, again, it's our experience in this space together. So I am a sponge and I want to learn from you as much as I want to kind of drop some nuggets as well. So, the other thing that I would say is understanding that, and I think, Frankie, you hit the nail on the head, understanding that not everybody is able, right, or capable of having these conversations, and coming to the table with this understanding really allows us to recognize that it may be difficult for some others. So some people are processors, so it may take them a couple hours, a couple days to really process everything that has been said. Nonetheless, there's an opportunity to follow up and make sure that we're closing out that conversation. And some people are ones that will shoot right back at you, right? Those are the times that you may want to take a step back if there's somebody that's being defensive and let them know, hey, you know what, this isn't a productive conversation. Maybe we need to table this for another day, another time. Sometimes you may even need to get a moderator or a witness involved. Either way, we should not be second guessing ourselves, especially when we're coming to the table with pure intentions, and knowing that as far as our intentions are concerned, we want to move forward again in a meaningful way with that individual or team. Next slide. So the 7 steps that are needed to manage these conversations. So making sure again that we are starting with self. How am I showing up? Right? We know that the only people that we can be accountable for are ourselves. So making certain to, again, the points that have been made, are we coming up in an authentic and whole way to the conversation? Are we removing any distractions? Are we checking our faces, right? Are we checking ourselves and we're checking our biases coming into the conversation? Because as much as we talk about the unconscious bias, as much as we talk about that in the workplace and as it relates to, marginalized communities and different, right? I think that we all come to the table, we all come to the conversation with some biases. So making sure that we're checking ourselves, checking in with ourselves. Are we of sound mind, body, and soul so that we can have a meaningful conversation? That we're also noticing when safety is at risk. So again, that may be a situation where somebody's being combative or somebody's being defensive in the space. Certainly if somebody's blocking a door, if somebody's standing up, they're being the aggressor in that space. Again, we may need to table that conversation, move to an open public space, and next time when we approach that conversation, have someone there to mediate or have someone there as a witness. Make it safe to share. In a couple slides, we're going to talk about the difference between safe spaces and comfortable safe spaces. but make it safe to share simply means that we're listening, right? We're not attacking someone's experience. We're not attacking someone's thought process, that we're open, that we are leading with empathy, that we are opening our hearts to having that conversation. Master our stories and dealing with our strong emotions. Mastering our stories, what are you trying to tell, right? And that goes back to, have you made the notes? Are you kind of all over the place? Do you have specifics? Speaking honestly without offending, right? That blame game certainly will shut down the conversation. It will shut down the relationship, and it will turn somebody on their heels. And then again, when we talk about the empathy piece, again, meeting people where they are, trying to understand the other's experiences and turning those crucial or critical conversations into actions. I think that sometimes that's the piece that's lost. We have these great intentions, we've had these great conversations. It's the now what? How do we now put that into motion? How do we now get boots on the ground and we push forward in a meaningful way so that we're reaching towards our 5 or our 3 or our 1 year goals and plans? All right. So next we're going to talk a little bit about setting the stage.
Looks like we've got another question from Jillian Wall.
Hello, everyone. Great to be here. Thanks, Jazz. Dominique, a great presentation. I just thought the 7 steps that you have here are pretty critical, because there are a couple of things that you put there that actually prevent a lot of people more and more today from actually speaking up. You touched on noticing when safety is at risk, making sure it's safe to share. And you also said, speak honest. You have there, speak honestly without offending anyone. In today's world, you know, most of the conversations are halted because of that fear, because it's a lot more dangerous sometimes to challenge things. You don't know how sensitive people are. You can try your best, and in critical conversations, especially in advocacy or in addressing things where people feel so strongly about their beliefs, the person who is standing up to have the conversation very often has no control over what would offend the other individual, right? Sometimes you can try your absolute best, but the topic or the other party, the topic could be a trigger for the audience that you're speaking to. You don't know who's in the audience. You don't know whether it's one-on-one or whether it's in a group setting. So what would your feedback be on that, those points? Because speaking honestly without offending, safety at risk, and making it safe to share, how much of that is often within the control of the party about to have the difficult conversation? Because sometimes that's the reason the conversation is not.
Yeah, it is, right? A lot of times that's the reason that it hasn't happened up until that point. And I would agree with you, right? If I am approaching you, Jillian, and I want to have a conversation, I can't own your experience, right? I can't own your experience in this space. I can't own your experience before and or after. What I can own is my intentions and the words in which that I use in order to connect with you. So I think that, you know, what I would say to anybody is, again, going back to my previous point around knowing that we're going to fail, right? Knowing that you are going to offend somebody, knowing that it is going to be possibly a trigger for somebody in the room. But when you come with pure intentions, when you come knowing that, hey, I am just somebody trying to make headway, I am somebody who is trying to get it right, and being open in that space, I think that that is the missing piece many times, right? If we go back to that ego piece, right? People come into the room and, well, I didn't offend you. You can't tell me how I feel. You can't tell me my experience. But really being able to use language as if, much like, hey, you know what? My apologies. I didn't understand, or I'm coming from a place of, again, ignorance. Educate me. Let me know what I need to do going forward if we're going to continue in this relationship. Because I think that there's some onus on both sides. And, you know, the one thing that I've really focused on over the last year, especially being in this DE&I space full time, is that there is, again, ownership and some education that needs to happen from both perspectives. And I can't empathize or know or advocate or sponsor something that I'm aware of, right? Because ignorance is bliss. So I think that what I would say in that space is it's about understanding that you are going to offend somebody, right? You aren't going to necessarily always be a soft space place to land, but being able to be humble and also being able to build our organizations with people that are reflective of those that work inside our organizations. Somebody asked me one time, what can we do to be better? What can we do to win? And my response was simple: hire Black women, right? Because I need to feel safe, right? I need to feel comfortable. I need to be around people that get it. And as much as, you know, my white counterparts can empathize, as much as my white counterparts can say that they're sorry, that they'll do better, that they want to read and educate themselves, there is nothing more powerful than someone in the room that already understands my story without me even saying anything. So that's a long answer, but does that help? I mean, does that kind of put some of the pieces together?
I'd say yes. I just really thought it was important to touch on the fact that sometimes it's absolutely unavoidable. You have absolutely no control over. You can try your best, but the difficult conversations are at times may put you at risk. All right. It's being mindful that you're not intentionally putting others at risk. But a difficult conversation, the person championing it very often, it's a combination, yes, of humility and courage. They're putting themselves at risk, and sometimes it's worthwhile taking the chance to offend someone for the greater good of the others that you're championing the conversation for.
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. Listen, and sometimes we're offended by things we didn't even know that we would be. Right? Yeah. Like sometimes there's a conversation that we're happening and we're like, whoa, I didn't know I was this passionate about this particular thing. So absolutely, absolutely. But and again, you've said it, and I'll just say it again, knowing that we're going to fail in this space more times than we win, knowing that we're going to get it wrong more times than we get it right, but being able to go back to the drawing board with a humble heart and being able to say, hey, Frankie, pour into me. Hey, Jillian, pour into me. Let me know where I went wrong. I think is super important. Super important.
Excellent.
No, thank you for that. Absolutely. Thank you for that. Someone asked about the slides. I will definitely make sure that the slides are available. Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any other hands or any other comments in this space? All righty. So now we're going to be turning inward a little bit. I think you can advance 2 slides, setting up the stage, kind of turning inward, looking at, again, starting from me before we get into we. How can I impact the greater good? When we're looking at, next slide, when we're looking at turning inward, it's important to point out that many leaders, and again, we've talked about it, avoid these uncomfortable conversations for obvious reasons, right? It is uncomfortable. There's going to be some conflict. There may be some ramifications on the back end that I'm not quite ready to deal with. And I think that when we're talking about that, we have to, again, check our own selves, check our own emotions, check our own passion, maybe even some of the trauma that we're dealing with that's going to prevent us from having these conversations. So consider the following statement. Describe the one that would make you, or that would align with how you would feel. Is race or racism something that you feel comfortable talking about? Something that, no, I'm good on that, I'll read about it, or usually I'm somewhere in the middle, right? Just kind of take some time and kind of sit with ourselves to think about that. And then also, I'll open it up to you all. What's the hard part when we're talking about racism in particular, right? Again, somebody that works in this Jedi space, this is where a lot of my time is spent. When we're looking at race relations and racism and from a justice and an equity perspective, what's the hard part of talking about race? For you, for your counterparts, maybe people that you've spoken to? I think Jillian, you really hit the nail on the head. a couple times with the fact that, is it safe?
We have hands raised, Frankie, and then Jillian, I believe. Frankie, you want to unmute?
I like this very much. I like the way you put like a chart to show that it's not, you know, just yin or yang. There's a whole, you know, flow. And, you know, I happen to be in a family with multiple races, you know, through marriage, children, and I grew up in a community, and people have assumptions when they see me, but I actually did not grow up in the community of what people see. And so I know what it's like to be bullied severely in the Caucasian community, because I've been through it 99% of my life when it came to any type of bullying. And so for me, it's a no-brainer. You know, I'm like, not only am I very comfortable, it's like, I can't partake in your organization when I see it's an all-white executive board and it's all white this and all white that. And I have confronted, especially a lot of white men and white women, and sometimes there's been pushback. So for me, I guess I would like to know race. I want to learn a little more of how to break through people that they do this wonderful ghosting technique. The minute that I speak up about racism issues, a lot of times I'm ghosted. And I'm sure a lot of people go through that. It's like, oh no, this is the troublemaker, you're the squeaky wheel. We could do better with just continuing what we're doing without your voice. So where's the bridge to get over that? Because I'm working on that a lot. I'm working on no, I think we need to still go forward with this. I think we still need to, you know, open this up. Is it like, why are you uncomfortable, or is that too confrontational?
I think it's a great question. I would say in my experience, people who aren't ready to have that conversation, starting with a why question, certainly sends their backs up, right? Yeah. Like it becomes this defensive, well, what do you mean I'm not ready? I just didn't know that the conversation needed to happen. Right? So for me, I guess how I've been able to soften the blow is I lead with facts and figures, black and white. This is why it needs to happen now. This is a non-negotiable. And in organizations that I've gone into, leading with those facts and figures really means, are we going to make our revenue line, or are we not going to make the revenue line? And that goes down to how we hire people, how we onboard people, our policies and procedures, and are all of these things considered when you are crafting your operational department. And when you start talking money, especially with executives, they perk up, right? I may not be 100% on board with it. I may not understand it, but I am at least willing to listen. And if we can get people to just listen, and they have the understanding that you may be wrong, right? They may be wrong about what they've thought before, right? And maybe turn that message in such a way that now it's their idea, you've got them hook, line, and sinker, right? Remember, I come from a space where in the biopharma space, it's very diverse. You've got a lot of these scientists, these great thinkers, and I was kind of plummeted into a space where it is a predominantly white institution that is run by the Catholic Church. I am the only Black teacher. I am the only person that identifies as LGBTQ in that space. So coming in, it was the non-negotiable for me, right? I understand that you may be willing to talk about race, but you don't want to talk about sexuality. You don't want to talk about transgender. You don't want to talk about those things. But at the end of the day, you can't call yourself an institution where everyone is welcome. And it is the intersectionality of those things, right? Me being Black is no more important than me being a woman, than me being married to a woman, right? So that is really those non-negotiables. And when we know our value as individuals, those may be organizations that we can't work with. I cannot do business alongside these organizations because they don't value who I am wholly, right? Only just this piece of me. Right? So it doesn't allow me to show up authentically. But I would say, to answer your question, Frankie, lead with facts and figures, right? When you're talking to executives, when you're talking to people who are looking to grow their brand, to grow their reach, to grow their customer base, put in front of them why they can't do that, why they will never be able to do that if they don't look at things for what they were, or I'm sorry, for what they are, right? This isn't a new subject, right? This isn't a new thing. It's not the squeaky wheel or the shiny coin. This has always been. And now I think that society, again, is just kind of catching up, right? Black and brown people have dealt with these things, right? Gay and lesbian people have dealt with these, feeling ostracized or not feeling safe in these environments, or not feeling seen or heard or valued for so very long. And I think that now, to Jillian's point, people have to and are finding the courage to speak up.
Thank you. Very relevant, very strong.
Okay, I think we have Jillian next.
Dominic, I think that's excellent. And I think in the excellent point shared by Frankie and yourself, Dominic, well responded to. However, when it comes to racism, I think we have decades of evidence to prove that facts and figures don't address the ignorance with regards to racism. First of all, there is only one race. It's the human race. And I think very often what's happened is people confusing ethnicity with race, and it's convenient. And if we don't address the fact that there is only one race and accept the fact again that the racism that we deal with, especially here in the US, is remnant of the transatlantic slave trade. And it's about we've stigmatized the color of skin because what we define as African-American here is Black. What we're really trying to identify is distinguish the hierarchy that's more colorism than anything else. Because how would you respond to a white Algerian defining themselves as African-American? The fact is they are African-American, but we wouldn't embrace them as African-American because you will see a white individual before you. So then the issue of racism that we're dealing with in the US is not because of the fact that there's a division of race, is the fact that we want to continue to perpetuate that hierarchy that's more based on skin color. And we've got to address the fact that of course, it's ignorant and inhumane to penalize and continue to perpetuate injustices upon individuals because of something they absolutely can't change, the color of their skin. All right. So what do we then do to address this affinity that we have to the ignorance that allows us to uphold this hierarchy? Because facts and figures and historical facts and actual evidence doesn't quite address that, and people can become very emotional when we're having conversations about race. And so give me an example. How do you think an American, a white American or a Black American, I will say Black because that really is the issue. It's white and Black, because the Black community would not embrace a white Algerian referring to them as African American.
Yeah, no.
And these are things that occurred.
Oh,
so it's education, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is education, right? Like, and again, when I say facts and figures, right, in my experience, those have been the things that have worked, right? Over the last few years, again, as people are more open to having these conversations, but a lot of it is education. A lot of it, again, is meeting people where they are and being able to turn their heels on what they thought was the truth, right? And sometimes that's a very difficult place to shake them from, right? Because this is what they've learned. This is what's been written in their history books, right? This is what, again, to your point, there is this historical documentation from their perspective of what is right. And now to kind of turn that and tell the complete truth feels threatening, right? It feels unsafe to them. But it is, to your point, having that opportunity to share those educational share the background, right? The education around it. And you're absolutely right. It's not race, right? We're talking about colorism, because when it all comes down to it, we're all a part of the human race. No, I love that. No, thank you for that.
We have another hand up, Diana Montero. You have to unmute, Diana. There you go.
Hello all. I apologize a little bit for my tardiness. I'm sorry. I find myself, when you're talking about facts and figures and everything, that's very important when I facilitate some diversity and inclusion training, especially like Title VI and Title VII. I find myself, people are clinging, and they cling to one particular fact that is almost absolving like an entire race of wrongdoing. And then that's when I come in. I happen to be from Caribbean parents, and my and what Jillian said is so on point with regards to colorism and people telling me I'm not really Black, but when I'm facilitating, I was off track a little bit, but when I'm facilitating, I find some people, white people, for example, will cling to, there were Black people that owned others, that owned slaves, or that sold other people into slavery. Mm-hmm. And I said, you know what? That is absolutely true. But don't just stop there. Don't just cling to that particular fact in history, because, when you're talking about critical race theory, when you're talking about history, there were kidnappings, there were rapes, there was the whole gamut. So it runs the gamut, but I find people that will think that, diversity and inclusion training and that critical race theory is all about kill whitey. And I think that I mentioned this to Jazz, but I quickly have to, shift the focus on, wait a minute, hold on, pump the brakes real quick, because this is what happened from the beginning. And this is what's still happening because of the benefits of what happened way back then that has lingered on, and the bullying that is generational, the bullying that continues to manifest itself into housing, into education, and as a whole, not just as an individual, but as a whole group of people, and just keeps going on. I have to, and I hate, and sometimes I have to do it ad nauseum, because it's like, you need to get this, because it's not just Black people owned other slaves. We know, we're quite aware of that, but it goes on. It keeps on going. Learn about that. And, I heard, I'm sorry to ramble or go on and on, but.
No, I love it. Please.
But when I was watching The View, and then I saw, Condoleezza Rice being interviewed. And one thing she said about critical race theory was, she said that she didn't want for white kids to leave feeling bad about being white. And I said, well, for as smart as she is, she's and as wonderful as she is, she was the first, Black head of the National Security Council. But I think that missed the mark. It completely missed the mark, because of the fact that if you're teaching critical race theory, if you're teaching history the way history is supposed to be taught in its entirety, with the totality of the disadvantages to groups of people that have lingered on through centuries.
And Diana, not to cut you off, but I think what you're saying is it appeared to be a lot more concerned about one's fragility than actually educating about the facts.
Exactly, it is, and I'm sorry that I ran that off the table, but but that's what it is.
We're going to let Dominique respond to you. Her time is ticking, and we want to get to everyone. And she also has another hand raised. So Dominique, if you would respond, and then we'll move on to Barbara's question is next, if you don't mind.
No, Diana, I mean, again, I think that you are hitting the nail on the head, right? I think that, you know, sometimes those facts and figures open up the conversation, but it's important for us to share and show that no one experience is monolithic, right? So there is no one way to be anything, and being able to now put the pieces together in the experiences. I mean, how often in your communities, in your organization, that, you know, people say, oh my goodness, I don't like those people. No, but you're different. Right? No, it's them, it's not you. But really, again, that education piece that, you know, you spoke of, that Jillian spoke of, is, you know, very, very important as we move forward.
Wonderful. All right, we're going to ask Barbara to unmute. She has a question.
Yes, I apologize for you not being able to see me because I don't know how to do the video on this computer. So you'll have to just listen. I have some comments more than a question that basically my comments will sort of wrap up what everybody has said. And recently I've been exposed to lectures from the Genome Project, and I've learned a lot about race that I didn't understand, plus some other exposures I've had, which I won't get into. But number one, race does not exist. It's a social construct. It is not a biologic construct. If you don't understand that, then you're really going to be off forever, because if you think it's biologic, now what is biologic? We all come from Africa. Some people left Africa early and went far away. Those became white people. We're going to just talk about black and white, but we know there's a lot in between. And some didn't leave Africa till later. So we just look different based on our environments. It's not racial. In fact, people didn't even live under the concept of race till the 1700s. So the whole reason to create race was to promote racism and white supremacy. That's why race was the concept of race was created. And one thing that you can tell from a country that, like they say, well, is this country racist? The best way to find out is to listen to 4-year-old children, 5-year-old children, 6-year-old children when they do the little studies with the dolls. You know, the dolls, and the kids all prefer the white doll over the black doll. So that tells you, yes, our country is very much racist. Now, that's just a very high level way of looking at it, which sort of agrees with everything everybody has said. And that's something I want to get into when I retire. I want to work on this area with people and sort of do more about it, because I've been exposed to things a lot of people haven't. But I think that what you said so far is pretty much on target.
Thank you. My old friend Barb. Hi.
Hi.
Yes. No, thank you. Thank you, Jillian. Thank you, Diana, Frankie, Barb, for adding that. I think that we can talk about this for days, right? Like, this is the hot topic. I appreciate it. It seems like a lot of energy in this space, but I know that we are short on time. So if we could advance, I want to say 2 slides. So again, turn inward, right? Really check base, check home, see what it is, and see what are some things that are lacking. If you feel ill-prepared, make sure that you are getting the resources, the help, the support, starting from a place of knowledge, right? Find it in a book. I once heard a quote. Someone said that if you want to hide knowledge, hide it in a book, right? Put it in a book. People don't want to read. You know, it's going to take time. It's going to take patience. It's also going to take grace, right? Understanding, again, I kind of go back to that one thing around that there is no one way to do one thing, right? Being Black, there is no one monolithic experience as far as the Black race is concerned, or to be a Black woman. Make sure that you are looking for finding an advocate, a sponsor, a mentor, someone that can help you really put those pieces together. So if this is a conversation, again, I'm unwilling, I'm unable, I'm uncomfortable with, making certain that, again, we are aligning ourselves with people in our communities and in our networks that can allow us and that can provide that feedback in a meaningful way that we can actually digest and not take offense to, so that we can lead more meaningful conversations, experiences, and certainly lives when it all comes down to it. Next slide, please. I've said this before, but it's about finding comfort in the discomfort, right? Understanding that you're not alone, right? There are people that are rooting for you. There are people in the organization that want to see you win, that want to see you be successful. And sometimes it is difficult. It's hard to find your people, to find our people. It doesn't mean that we stop looking, right? It doesn't mean that we alter who we are and we show up any less authentic than we did before. Also that you'll be better with time and practice and experience. So we know it's just like riding a bike, right? That first time you fall off 10, 20 more times, and soon you start to get your rhythm. You start to, get your courage up, and understanding that even when you start and you master that 15 or that 12 speed, there's a 16 speed, right? Where you're going to have a conversation with somebody like Jillian, like Barb, like Diana, like Frankie, where they're going to drop those nuggets and you're like, hold on, maybe I need to redo these slides, right? And that's okay too, right? And that's okay too. Stay engaged, be vulnerable, and establish those cultural norms within your organization. When we talk about the cultural norms, we know that it starts at the top. We know that it starts with our leaders. We know that it starts with the people that are in positions of power. So it's really about leaning in to the conversation, but also using our privilege and power to make sure that we are also pulling others along the way. All right, next slide. This is where I talked about there's a difference between safety and comfort. In my experience, safety is that space where I feel like I can ask a question without fear or judgment, right? Other people are not really going to challenge it one way or the other, but I don't necessarily have someone in the room that just gets it, right? That just understands it. This kind of goes back to my comment around hire Black women if you want to be successful, right? In an organization that I may be affiliated with. And then on the other side of that, we have this idea of comfort. So this is where my reality will be agreed with, validated, and unchallenged, and I don't need to explain it, right? What's understood does not have to be stated. Next slide. When we're also looking at building the capacity to have these uncomfortable, critical, crucial conversations, it's about addressing the strong emotions in the room, right? Understanding that they may vary, that again, we're meeting people where they are. We want to make sure that if there is pushback, that we are able to table conversations, and then we're able to revisit that conversation at a later date and time. Sometimes it's having a one-on-one versus having a group conversation. I have it here, right? Some students, and this has been my experience, some students may become visibly upset, right? Others may push back. But what is it? What can we do in order to, again, table, right? We don't want to let them know, or we don't want to send the message that what they're feeling is wrong, but how do we do so in a respectful way in order to protect their hearts in this tender space and still allow them to continue to show up? We want to plan ahead, and then also be able to build the resilience and the strength. So that's where we talk about that courage, that comfort, and sometimes practice makes perfect in that space. And then we're preparing. So this, when we talk about the preparation, what I really want to focus on, and what I focused on in this space, is really some tangible tools, like what we can do. And some of them may seem a little juvenile, some of them may be a little bit throwback. Hey, I did that when I was in elementary school or high school, but I think it still stands true and relevant when we look at organizations. So the first strategy is really about self-regulation. If we can go to the next slide. So reiterating, restating what you heard. You'll hear me say it oftentimes. Hey, well, what I hear you say is this, right? I want to make sure that I'm clear. I want to make sure that I am clear about what it is that you're putting down, so that we're starting from square one together. And when we're doing that, it enables the individual to reflect on what's being heard, because oftentimes, oh, well, no, that's not what I meant. No, I think you got that part wrong, right? So when I say, hey, this is what I hear you saying, is that correct? That at least puts us at that square one. We're on the same page. So now we're addressing the same issue together, right? It kind of goes back to, are we aligned on the subject matter? Contemplating. So it's counting to 10 seconds before I respond. So many times we jump into the conversation because I'm going to finish your sentence, right? Or I'm going to finish your thought, or, oh, I already know what you're going to say, so let me just jump in there. But again, we want to honor that person's vulnerability in the space. We want to honor that person showing up and having the courage to even have the conversation. So it's important to count those 10 seconds. It may be uncomfortable because silence is uncomfortable to many of us, but nonetheless, it is going to be important. Take a deep breath. Again, make sure that we're checking in with ourselves. Is this a conversation we're willing and able to have? And then make sure that we're communicating effectively, speaking with compassion and thoughtfulness. I know that, I was listening to something the other day, Unbound by Tarana Burke, and she says in her book that, we always hear sticks and stones may break my bones, but words may never hurt me, which is not true, right? We know that words matter, language matters, and we want to make sure that we're being thoughtful, that we're being intentional with the words that we're using as we're connecting and addressing situations that are critical and are very risky, right? And take a lot of courage to even undertake. Again, be it in our homes, in our organizations, and certainly for me in our schools. Right. Strategy number 2, again, this is a temperature check. This is, again, maybe I am not in a position to have the conversation. Maybe this is a group setting. If you want to advance the slides. Staying on top of that emotional temperature in the room and checking in with individuals, again, is going to be very, very important. So we can do this in nonverbal ways, right? So these are just some examples. Again, it seems a little juvenile. It seems a little throwback. I've had some success with this even in boardrooms, right, where people don't feel comfortable in speaking up. Maybe they're sitting in the back of the room and they can just give me kind of that nod or that cue one way or the other. But this allows us to just understand where we're all at, right? When somebody walks out of the room and, they're huffing and puffing, now we know why. But it also, again, allows us to meet people where they are. Lets us know if those conversations are being processed, and if people are picking up what we're putting down, or if we need to kind of rinse and repeat and look at addressing those situations differently. So as you see here, a fist, I'm uncomfortable, can't move on. A finger, uncomfortable and need some help before I can move on. 2 fingers, I'm a little uncomfortable, but I want to try to move on. 3 fingers, I'm not sure how I'm feeling in the space. 4, I'm comfortable enough. And then 5, hey, I'm ready to go. And again, we can use these in our boardrooms, and we can certainly use them, with our younger students, younger children as well. Strategy 3, and many of us may do this already, a roundtable meeting. If I am leading up a team, there's a conversation to be had. I'm coming in for training for an organization. Generally, this is why we won't do any type of DE&I training or any type of uncomfortable conversations in a group larger than whatever your number may be. Having that roundtable discussion certainly allows people to be more vulnerable, more open, share a little bit more. Again, role play certainly help in this space. Journaling is phenomenal, right? Everybody gets a journal coming in, right? Everybody gets that notepad. Not only can you use that as parking lot information, right? Things that we need to address later on, but it's also great to just personally reflect on some things that came up for us during those conversations, right? Maybe some things that came up throughout the day, and we stay connected and continue on the conversation. Jillian, I'll be in touch, right? Those types of things. So it's important for us to just have those effective measures and meet people where they are, and understanding that we're all processing the information differently, and we're meeting people at different steps in their journey as they are, building the capacity to have these conversations. And then last but certainly not least, I just want to talk about and just remind us to take a step back from the work that you're doing, whatever it is, right? The work that you're doing, the things that we're so passionate about, to first off reflect on the greatness, right? If it was easy, everybody would be doing it. If it was easy, everybody would be in the throes of that work. But making certain that we are celebrating the wins, as small as they may be, right? As infrequently as they may come, and making certain that we are bringing people along for the journey. Right? When we look at taking care of ourselves, it's not just, again, about the physical, but then also about the mental, right? Are we meditating? Are we spending time with ourselves? Are we checking in? What does our diets look like, right? Are we running ourselves ragged? I'm one of those people, like, you can't pour from an empty cup. So you can't be all things to everyone and then at the end of the day have nothing for yourself. So establishing that daily routine, making sure that we're practicing discernment, saying no. It's difficult for women in particular, right? There are studies that show that we don't say no enough. There's a reason that it is the most underutilized word in the English language. And sometimes, we just have to practice in the mirror. No, unfortunately, I cannot do that. Unfortunately, today it's not going to work. I'll look and see if I can do it some other time. Hell no, not able to do that, right? Whatever works for you, depending on who it is that you're talking to, but making certain that it's okay to set those boundaries because we don't do it often enough. Practicing compassion for ourselves. We do it for everyone else. Why not give yourself a little bit, right? Making sure, again, that we understand that we're going to fail. We're going to get it wrong, but we're going to get back up the next day. We're going to find that mentor. We're going to find help along the way, and we're going to get it right. And being honest with ourselves. Being honest with ourselves. Is this something I'm able to do? Is it something I'm capable of do? What other resources, tools might I need in order to do that in a successful, meaningful way? That's all I've got.
Wow.
That's all I've got.
Absolutely, absolutely. Lot to unpack.
Yes.
We want to be mindful of giving our team a break. We will be taking a full 15-minute break. Let's actually be back here at 2:15 for our next speaker.
Okay.
If you guys want to hang out in this space, and I don't know if you want to, continue to chat with Dominique, it's up to you during that 15 minutes. I need my break. This has been amazing.
Thank you,
Back to
Dominique.
you.
No,
Thank
thank
you
you.
so
Thank you
much.
for the
Thank you.
opportunity. Thank you for the conversations. Thank you. And like I said, I'll definitely send over, again, the slides, and then there's like a little self-assessment too, right? So again, if you want to roll it out in your organizations, if, there's some different iterations of it, by all means, feel free to have at it.
Absolutely. Okay. Thank you so much
Thank you,
for
Dominique.
that.
Thank you.